Joining us today is Mark Keener, CEO and Managing Partner of International Partners, LLC. Mark has over 30 years of experience in commercial real estate, so this is totally different for our members. We're going to talk to him about his specialty with his primary focus on identifying opportunities and investors. Mark has successfully owned and operated 1,000 multifamily units in California and Texas and expanding. And Mark founded International Partners in 2000 and has earned outstanding financial returns for its investors. International Partners LLC owns and operates a real estate investment company that invests primarily in garden-style Class A and B apartment communities with latent hidden value. With the company investing in every sponsored deal, it has consistently earned outstanding financial returns for its investors and provided exceptional housing value for their residents with a sharp team of business-savvy real estate professionals. A native of Oakland, California, Mark is committed to youth education from being past national chair of the Accounting Career Awareness Program and continuing to donate locally to ACAP in San Francisco. ACAP provides high school students with a fully paid one-week summer residency at a local university to learn about accounting, business, and financial literacy. Mark, thanks for joining us and welcome to the seminar.
Thanks for having me, Darren. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Every time we talk, man, I always glean something from you about your business, so I am really glad and excited to have you here to speak to our first-time homebuyers and those who are also not first-time homebuyers, but the majority of the folks who will be listening to this are about to purchase a home for the very first time. So again, as I mentioned at the top of the presentation, this is a little bit different. This is investing in multifamily properties. So Mark, the interesting question that I want to start you off with is how did you actually get started in investing in commercial property?
Well, great question. And I'll also answer that with a quote from one of my mentors, the late Jim Rome, who talked about being a kid buying a bike. And his recommendation is buy two bikes, one to ride and one to rent. And so that same philosophy was sort of behind my getting involved in commercial real estate, but also learned early on that when I was a business major and taking my initial accounting classes, learned how the way the tax laws are structured, they were more favorable towards investing in real estate than any other asset class out there, which started me to thinking and delving into more about why was this so. And the short answer is that the government incentivized the private sector to take on the responsibility of providing housing for the masses rather than the government doing that. And for me, another insight was that, one of life's three necessities, along with food, clothing, is shelter. And so it was something that was going to be around, wasn't a fad, here today and gone tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And as I looked into it even further, understanding the potential for passive income and also the build up and creation of wealth through equity made it a simple no-brainer for me. So I also sort of questioned who came up with this rule about we're supposed to work 40 years. And then after that, it's playtime. Why not work 5 years and then start playtime? So again, real estate answered and checked all the boxes with regard to a better quality of lifestyle. And so it's a way to do well and do good at the same time. So those are some of the reasons behind why I chose this path of providing housing and also doing it on a scaled up basis with regard to investing in multifamily apartment communities.
Beautiful. Love the Jim Rohn quote. Going to steal that one for sure. But it just it crystallizes the whole concept of what you're saying. And I wish that I had learned that simple quote in college. And I think my financial picture would look totally different by now. So perfect for this audience and exactly what we're going to be talking about and what we're helping them to do as well. So thank you for that. So what are the best properties in terms of size or number of units that I should consider investing in as a first-time commercial real estate investor? Where should I start?
Yeah. Well, Best is obviously relative, and you did give some context by saying first time, but also at the same time, I sort of operate on the notion that prescription without diagnosis is malpractice.
Mhm.
So everyone has their own sweet spot in terms of what feels good for them, what's comfortable. Because investing, although we do it for financial rewards and making sure that it's a sound investment in terms of meeting returns, it also is an emotional thing that needs to feel good for the investor as well. So I'll answer the question by maybe sharing a little bit of my story in terms of taking baby steps initially, but there's also ways to, if you don't want to take baby steps initially, by partnering up with folks that are already doing what you want to do and leveraging off of their experience. But for me, I bought my first single family dwelling within a year of graduating from college, and it was an off market transaction that I ended up was brought to my attention by my longtime friend who I grew up with, who recently started his career in real estate. It was a probate sale, and so I wasn't competing with anybody else at the time. And so that led to that acquisition, which led to another acquisition. And this was being done while I was also, working a full-time job.
Mm.
Then continued to do that, and accumulating a number of single-family homes, but also I continued to learn, educate myself, and then soon discover that you will plateau or max out on the number of single family or non-commercial rental property that you can own. And non-commercial typically means 4 units or less. And those size acquisitions also show up in your credit report, which when you go for a loan, lenders and financial institutions will see that you have a number of real estate loans, and if they see usually around 10 or so, you're tapped out in terms of being able to borrow from them. So I quickly learned that, stepping into the world of commercial real estate, typically, 5 units or more, some places maybe 10 or more. And also in those situations, you're required to set up a legal entity as the borrower. And as a result, that information, the loan that you take out, does not show up on your personal credit report because it's a legal entity that becomes the borrower. And typically, that legal entity structure is that of a limited liability company. So the next step was, again, to quote someone else, David Schwartz, who wrote the book, The Magic of Thinking Big. And there's no magic in small dreams. So learning that real estate investing is also a team sport, went to events to meet and other people that were in the space, and made a commitment that the next acquisition would be something of scale. And that was an acquisition of 56 units, and we've been going up from there ever since to as many as 336 units at a time. So that's a little bit of my story, and I hope from that your audience can distill from that something that would resonate with them in terms of helping them understand how to make this. I will say that at present, our company structure is such that we allow private investors, institutional investors to leverage off of our experience now, meaning that they don't necessarily have to go through what I went through and a lot of folks getting started, where they, buy one single family dwelling, which means that when you're occupied 100%. When you're vacant 100%. And oftentimes you self-manage, and you're getting the calls late at night, weekends, that this is broken, that's broken. So in our situation, we scale and allow people to leverage on our expertise so that we handle all of the heavy lifting when it comes to interaction with tenants. Because a lot of times when people speak of their experiences in real estate, and they're doing it as kind of on their own, and they talk about the stories of bad tenants, and having to do unexpected repairs, and all those things. Again, we take on ourselves because we know what we're doing in that space. And so our investors more or less get all the benefits of investing at a large scale, savvy, sophisticated level without having to do the legwork associated with it.
Aha. So, a $64,000 question. You mentioned private investors. Minimum investment required? to participate in one of your deals?
On our website, we have a profile that folks can fill out, and there's three categories of investor types that are needed. One being an accredited investor, second, a sophisticated investor, or third, a non-accredited investor. And all our investors need to fall into at least one of those three categories, and the criteria are listed on the website, which I won't go into right now.
Okay.
But typically, our investment minimum is for private investors starts at $100,000 and goes up from there. Typically, our institutional clients, and those could be starting with family offices and commercial real estate investment banking firms, they typically like to start their check writing size around $2 million and going north of that. So that's one of the things that we do. And for your audience, if they're, so some people do sometimes to get to that $100,000 threshold is to join up with other people to aggregate their amounts if need be to get to that point. But that's a little bit about our entry points as far as investing.
Got an interesting question to tag onto that question. Can someone who has retirement funds use a self-directed IRA funds or funds diverted from one investment vehicle for retirement into a self-directed IRA that can invest in real estate? Is that person who may not have liquid cash but has those funds, pension or retirement account, is that someone who may be eligible to either do a lump sum, allocation from that source into a project, or put together maybe 2 to 4 other people, maybe they all contribute $25,000 each, set up a legal entity such as an LLC, and of course, pool their monies and become a member of the International Partners Project or any project?
And the short answer to both questions is yes.
Okay, good.
And yes.
Good.
We've worked with numerous individuals who've had money in 401k plans or nonprofit retirement plans, and they've left jobs and their money is still sitting there and they still be their current employer. And most employers or plan administrators will allow them to self-direct their money into their own self-directed IRA plan, meaning that it's a simple transition or rollover from their employer or former employer's plan into their own self-directed IRA plan. And once the funds are in that IRA, they can absolutely now direct those funds into an investment structure with us. Granted, the returns and distributions go back into their account, but the returns that they can earn through their self-directed IRA are, typically across the board far greater than anything that may be going on in their existing funds that are oftentimes, in mutual funds and, being charged fees for management, whether they're making money or not. And in our case, the investors are direct investing, meaning that their money will be going into a specific apartment community rather than being thrown into a pool or a fund and being spread out over a number of various different properties that become hard to differentiate between, where your money actually ended up being deployed to.
Sure. That's perfect. Okay. So do you have or do you work with, say, a specific custodian to handle that kind of transaction for your investors?
Yeah, we've worked with a company called IRA Services, which is based here in Northern California, but there's several other ones throughout the United States and around, Intrust, Pensco, or just to name a few. So, but our experience has been with IRA Services.
Perfect. Okay. Good deal. All right. Lots of information that's already been shared here in the first few minutes. I mean, this is a little bit of a financial literacy course and the things and the principles that you've shared and the options for people who, again, may not have liquid cash, but they've got a ton of, money set aside in a retirement account and they want a little bit of control and get a better return on their investment dollars. So perfect. Love that. I do want to circle back to your first investment. And I want to ask you specifically, did you live in that house that you invested in initially, or did you hire a management company to handle those rents and repairs? Or did you just say, hey, I'll be tenant? And it was a single family, yes?
It was a single family, and
Okay, so
no, I never lived in it. It was
just
bought
rental.
strictly and solely for the purpose of it being an investment property.
Okay, all right. So I was thinking about the multi-unit. So your first multi-unit acquisition, did you live in that property and, of course, handle management to deal with repairs and collecting rents and things of that
Well,
nature?
well, again, the size of the first investment property on the commercial scale was 56
56.
units,
Right.
and it was not done with the intent of me wanting or needing to live in it.
Gotcha.
That would be taking rent away from our revenue stream, and so there was no need for me to do that. As far as you know, whether it's 56 units or 5 units, in all cases, I would look to have it managed by professional managers. And typically, the larger the size of the rental property, you're going to it requires a different skill set when it comes to property and asset management.
Hmm.
So typically, when you're looking at 100 units and more, and some markets even starting at 50, you're going to get a much better quality of property management than you would if you have a duplex or a fourplex or something smaller. And we're looking at people who understand that management is not just a matter of collecting rents and calling the repair person, but management that understands they play a vital role in helping to grow the value of the asset as though they were had a stake in ownership too. And that's a
Hmm.
whole different set of mental optics
Sure.
in preparation, how you go about becoming a professional manager when you look at things that way. So again, one of the beauties of investing in multifamily on a commercial scale is leverage,
Sure.
and there's people that are great at what they do, and it's proven to engage them to do what they're great at doing. In this case, I'm referring to a property manager.
Absolutely. Of course, you've probably had this question not attributed to your specific situation, but when people ask you, Mark, I'm just getting started. This is my first property ever. I've invested in a multifamily that's 5 units or more. Do you recommend, or since I'm handy, there's a lot of repair and things that would go wrong that, I'm familiar with that I can handle myself. Should I live in a building that I own in one of the units and obviously have the other, say, 4 units pay for the unit itself until I either acquire another asset or until this one is flowing well enough that, and by that I mean cash flowing well enough that I can, of course, now afford to pay for it as well as my own personal residence, whatever that might be, if I'm renting or if I'm buying another home.
Yeah.
Recommendation, or is that just a personal situation that you'd rather not?
Oh no, it's again one of the beauties about real estate and probably a lot of aspects of life. There's no one size fits all type of scenario, and some people may be starting out as investors and they have the skill set. Maybe they worked in the building trades space full time. So when it comes to doing repairs and maintenance of physical nature, it's a no brainer for them. On the other hand, you may have, and not to get lazy with being generalizing as far as gender, you may have a woman or a man for that matter
Hmm.
who has no experience in building trades things, so they're not going to be the person that wants to go over it and fix a broken toilet or to
Sure.
renovate a kitchen or things of that sort. So in all cases, I think the investment modeling and decision needs to be done on the basis that a manager will be managing the property. Whether that's the actual case or not may vary, but I think in terms of doing your financial modeling, doing your budgeting, it's best to include the expenses of a property manager in that model, and whether you self-manage or have a third party manage it, in either case, you're prepared for it financially. So does
Gotcha.
that
Oh, that's perfect. That is
cover what
perfect.
you're, yeah, good.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So since we're talking about property, since we're talking about real estate in the commercial vein, you mentioned at the top of the presentation or at the top of this recording, an LLC. So the next question becomes, since you are dealing with the public, since you are acquiring a property for the purpose of a rental, how does one protect themselves in this space? Most people that I've come across, when they first get started, they buy a property and they put a tenant in it, and they don't necessarily consider the potential legal ramifications should someone get hurt on the property. So I know you're not a lawyer, however, you've got experience here. Tell us, what should someone do when they first get started? Should they form a legal entity just to, have all of their, I's and T's dotted and crossed? Or, hey, let's jump in, get started, and let's purchase a property and, start investing?
No, it's a great question. And one of the things that I learned early on and also applied was to make sure that you protect the assets that you're acquiring, and a legal entity structure is the best way for doing so, meaning that if there's something of a legal nature that happens on the property related to the property, that stays a matter within the property and it doesn't spill over
Mm.
or into your personal assets and holdings, and bring on any personal liability beyond the liability of the asset that you bought for investment purposes. So in the case of maybe buying an initial property, you can set up an LLC and have the LLC own the property. There's some issues with financing. Sometimes banks are okay with that, sometimes they're not, but there's usually ways to protect yourself and also meet your financing requirements. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to commercial real estate, you really don't have a choice in the matter. The lending financial worlds require that their asset they're lending on be set up in a legal entity, sometimes referred to as a single purpose entities, and that entity is required to be set up solely for the operating of that property only and nothing else. And so in that situation, the lender as well as you, the investor, you're both protected by some of the asset protection laws that come as a result of having a legal entity. And in most cases, when it comes to commercial real estate, it's going to be a limited liability company or an LLC.
There you go. And that was leading right into the next question for the optimum in protection, an LLC for a single property investor, not just the property itself. But the next question becomes to partner or not to partner. And if you take on partners, the LLC is probably the best vehicle because it can have up to 99 members, and those members can be legal entities as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay. 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 Perfect. You want to add anything to that, or just because that's the answer I was looking for? But is there anything else you want to add there?
Yeah, I may have missed some of your earlier parts of your question, but if I, in terms of taking a stab at it again, um, setting up a legal structure and having a number of partners. You don't necessarily have to have a multitude of partners. It could be one individual and their spouse or significant other. It
Sure.
could be people who may want to contribute cash or talent or expertise to the acquisition process that help you know close and get it across the finish line. So again, it's a very personal and individual type of decision um, that's involved in how you want to form your ownership structure. But as people scale up and become bigger in terms of the size of their acquisitions, there's typically going to be more people that will be part of the ownership structure because um, you know more resources are needed on larger deals, and it also provides the means for other people to participate. It's a good way of sharing the good life, sharing the opportunity,
Sure.
and so that's the stage in which we're at right now in terms of how we structure deals. Is that we allow our partners to come on board as limited partners, typically meaning that's in a passive investor type position, and uh, it's a way of creating a win-win where we're helping them achieve their goals and they're helping us to scale up and achieve our goals in a faster way because we have greater resources to work with.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. And I realize that investing is a team sport. So if one were to begin considering investing in commercial property, multifamily property, who are the team members? Do we need an agent? Do we need a commercial real estate broker? How about the mortgage? Tell us who are members of your team, and think of it along the lines of a small scale. First time someone is looking at 5 units or more.
Well, from my experience, and again from learning from some of my mentors who are doing and have done what it is that I seek to do, because I put that emphasis on that because a lot of times there's people out there who talk the talk who don't walk the walk, and so you have to, number one, be very selective and careful about whose opinions that you're seeking. And I always make a point to make sure I'm getting advice, direction, counsel from those who are doing or have done what it is that I seek to do, and they're not just talking the talk and haven't walked the walk.
Sure.
So another thing that's good to do is associate yourself and put yourself in situations, go to events, get on group networks that deal with people that have done and doing what it is that you want to do. There's also a wealth of reading material out there. And when it comes to specifically working with brokers and agents, and if you're looking to buy an investment property, you should seek a broker agent that specializes in investment properties. Again, as I said, one size does not fit all, meaning that if someone says, oh, we do both residential and income properties, I would tend to shy away. In fact, well, I wouldn't do business with them, period, in the sense that, there's a world of difference in terms of preparation, language, understanding, and the emotional aspects associated with, am I buying a place that's going to be my home to live in and I'm concerned about bathroom sizes and kitchens, or am I making a decision that's going to provide generational wealth for me and my family and generations to come? And so commercial brokers speak a different language, they're trained differently, they prepare differently, and so myself and in starting this journey, I made a point to seek out only commercial brokers, and also taking one step further to ask them, do they invest
That's
in
sure.
multifamily apartments as well? That's an even greater thing to check off on how you screen who to work with, in terms of asking them if they're doing what they're doing as a profession. If it's that great, the question would seem like, well, why aren't you doing it yourself?
Mm.
So I find it completes the full circle when I can work with someone, be it a banker or broker, management company, that they actually invest in what it is that they have professional stewardship over.
Absolutely. Great answer. Thank you for that. Excellent advice. And Mark, I think our last question for you is, what's the risk and or liability when investing in commercial real estate?
Wonderful question, and I'll answer that question with part the law of attraction, in the sense that you know kind of what you think about you bring about. And a lot of times people who think about getting in commercial real estate or investing in commercial real estate, hear a lot of the chatter that goes on about, it takes money to make money. If it has a high return, it must be very risky. The rich get richer, the poor get poor, those types of mindsets. And in most cases, in fact, all cases, a lot of that is total nonsense. So you have to be careful of the opinions that you listen to, the words that you hear from people, and look at the sources of that information. So in commercial real estate, number one, it has what I refer to as asymmetrical returns, meaning that you have low risk and high returns. And I'll give you a simple example. On the risk side, when you find an investment property, you don't have to come up with 100% of the cash yourself to make that acquisition. There are financial institutions for multifamily that will lend you 70%, 75, in some cases 80% of the value. So if you just hit the pause button right there, who's got the risk?
Sure.
Is it you, the investor, or is it the financial institution?
Sure.
If they're taking on 80, 70% of the acquisition costs. So there right there, you can throw out the risk issue out the window, because the risk has been leveraged or taken on by your financing partner. When it comes to high returns, and again, there's a number of different ways you can get into commercial real estate. Some people are developers where they have to acquire land, get it entitled, and construct things, and there's kind of a 2 to 3 year period before it's fully operational and occupied, and there's cash flow. In our case, we're an investment company. We don't do ground up construction. So day one, as soon as we close the property, these are cash flowing assets. And so the return you start realizing immediately. And the way we structure deals too with our investors is that after a certain holding period where there's been enough appreciation and growth in the market that we can look to refinance, recapitalize the project, meaning bring in new debt, maybe bring in new investors, pay off some. But with those proceeds from the appreciation, we typically will repay the initial investment, the principal that's gone into it. So from that point on, you have what are referred to as infinite returns on investment, meaning that at that point you have nothing financially longer invested in the asset,
Sure.
but you still continue to receive returns on it. So that's my response with regard to
Risk.
the what I call sneaking thinking sometimes that comes along with being uninformed and uninitiated about the virtues and values of investing in commercial real estate and why I love it.
Man, and listen, that what you just gave there in response was more than a mouthful. To add to that, I want to make sure that our listeners are clear. Investing in a commercial property, 5 units or more, it is not contingent upon personal credit. It is contingent upon the performance if you are not doing ground up construction, as you just mentioned, but acquiring a property that is, occupied or move in ready to be occupied, and the rent rolls, basically the historical value of what it's done in the past. And is there an extra part to that where you are at least personally guaranteed should something go belly up, but again, not directly affecting your credit score? Do I have that right?
Well, there's a couple of things loaded up with that question that I'll respond to. Again, first and foremost is that when you're making a commercial real estate acquisition, that the financial institution that's taking on 70, maybe 80% of the risk by loaning the money, they're looking to the performance of the asset
Yes.
to service their debt and not the individuals who are involved in the acquisition themselves.
Yes.
So first and foremost, if it's a commercial loan, the lenders are looking at the asset and not you, the person, to be able to service not only the debt, but also the operating expenses necessary to make it a profitable venture. And then as far as credit worthiness, that is still important. That does not go away.
Mhm.
Lenders do look for the person who's signing on the loan. Typically, this is the general partner or the key principal, as they're referred to, that, and they're probably the managing member of the LLC. The person who is signing on the loan, it would bode well for them to, you know, have good to very good to excellent credit.
Sure.
And if there's cases where that's not the case, there's, can be explanations provided, or you can bring in somebody else in the borrowing structure to shore up any, shortcomings that the lenders may see with regard to the credit worthiness of the buyer. And then the other piece of that too is that, again, this loan that you're taking out for commercial property, that loan is not going to appear on your personal credit report because you're not the borrower. The legal entity, the LLC, is the borrower. And so that's, but that's how the structure works when it comes to financing and being able to structure things with virtually no impact on your credit score one way or the other, but at the same time, it allows you to start building up your schedule of real estate. And when you go to do the next loan, what the lenders are going to ask is, show us your schedule of real estate. And as that schedule of real estate keeps growing and growing and growing, you become more and more attractive to them in terms of your credit worthiness to take on bigger acquisitions. And they also see you as a partner for future business and not just a one and done or a one-off transaction. So rising tide raises all ships, and it's a lot of good things to creating that momentum going with regard to not just doing one deal, but continuing the process to do other transactions as well.
Absolutely. Well, Mr. Mark Keener, Dr. Keener, as I like to call you, you have given us an education in commercial real estate investing, and certainly I feel like I've gotten a degree in it just in this very short, brief conversation. I want to thank you for spending the time with us and our listeners, our members, and those who are, going down this journey, this path of investing in their first home or looking to invest in multiple homes. And I'd like to give them an opportunity to reach out to you. So on the screen here, we have your contact information, phone number 510-444-7810. And your email address is info@ipllcinvestments.com, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And to learn more about International Partners, you can visit Mark and his group at ipllcinvestments.com. And Mark, just in case someone is interested, which page, where should they go to complete the profile that signifies which of those three investor categories that they might?
Yeah. Well, first on the just on the contact information, the CA after my name, Mark Keener. I believe, Darren, you're just making reference to California.
California,
I just
yes.
want people to be confused if that means some certain designation other than the state, because I also am a CPA, and so I don't want that to be confused. So maybe in your edit you can.
Good catch. It was for California. Yeah, that we're just designating where you were.
Yeah. With regard to the website, there's a tab that says opportunities. Under opportunities, you'll see private investors, and when you click on that, that will provide them with the profile. And then also too, on the homepage, if you just want to join our community and just get general information without necessarily completing the profile, you can do that also through the homepage. But for the profile, it does indicate, well, I encourage everybody to take a look at it because it also will give you the definitions with regard to what defines an accredited investor, a non-accredited investor, as well as a sophisticated investor. And at the very least, providing us with that information, you move to the top of the list, so to speak, with regard to being provided proprietary information about future deals and upcoming deals. we consider folks in that category as the serious investor and not just the curious investor. So if you're serious, fill out a profile. If you're just curious, fill out just a general inquiry. Either one is fine, but I think at some point it's real important to get serious with creating a quality of lifestyle for yourself and others. And real estate, through its passive income and through its creation of wealth by the buildup of equity, is without question the greatest vehicle to do so.
Mark Keener, thank you, thank you, thank you. Many, many thanks. 1,000 thanks. This has been a great call. Looking forward to getting this out as quickly as possible to our members, and looking forward to doing some things with you and your group, International Partners LLC. Thanks once again, Mark. We greatly appreciate
All
you
right,
and your time.
let's do it.
All right. Thanks, sir. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.